Kethra Voss had worked in the Galactic Archives for 30 years. She had read millions of files. She had seen records of wars, plagues, and the rise and fall of empires. Nothing had ever scared her, but today, her hands were shaking. The archive room was cold and silent. Blue light came from the crystal walls around her. Kethra sat at her desk, staring at her screen. The file in front of her should not exist. It was hidden behind encryption so old that her computer almost could not read it. The file had only one label: Terra Absolute Interdiction. She did not know what Terra was. She had never heard that word before. But something about the file made her feel cold inside. The encryption was 12,000 years old. That meant it came from a time called the Sundering, a period that had almost no records at all. Historians called it the Dark Gap. Nobody knew what happened during those centuries. Kethra looked around the empty room. Her scales, normally bright blue, had turned pale. She knew she should report this to her supervisor and forget about it. That was the safe thing to do, but she could not stop herself. She had to know more. She spent 3 hours breaking through the old security codes. When she finally opened the file, she found very little inside. There was a star map showing a small yellow sun in a distant arm of the galaxy. There was a single planet marked in blue, and there was a warning that made her blood run cold. Containment protocol. Active. Do not approach. Do not communicate. Do not acknowledge. By order of the First Council. Violation means death. The First Council had not existed for 11,000 years. They were the founders of the Galactic Union, the ancient leaders who had built everything. Why would they seal away a single planet? What could be so dangerous that even mentioning it meant death? Kethra searched for more information. She found shipping routes that went around the quarantine zone but never through it. She found old navigation warnings that told ships to stay away. And she found energy readings that showed a containment field around the entire star system, a barrier of incredible power that had been running for thousands of years. Someone had built a cage around this world. Someone had locked it away and thrown away the key. She needed answers. She saved the file to a private crystal and went to find her mentor. High Archivist Solon Mir was old. His body was thin and gray, and he moved slowly. He had served the council for over 500 years. He had seen more history than anyone alive. When Kethra showed him the file, his reaction told her everything. His eyes went wide. His gray skin turned white. He stepped back from her as if she held a weapon. "Where did you find this?" he whispered. "In the deep archives. The old section that nobody uses anymore." Kethra held up the crystal. "What is Terra? What happened during the Sundering?" Solon grabbed her arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Delete it. Delete everything. Forget you ever saw this." "But why? What is on that planet?" "Nothing." His voice cracked. "There is nothing there. Do you understand me?" "Nothing." He turned and walked away. His steps were fast and uneven. Kethra had never seen him afraid before. In 500 years, he had faced wars and disasters without fear. But one small file had broken him. She did not delete the data. Instead, she went home and spent the night studying everything she could find. The quarantine zone was in a region of space that nobody visited. The few ships that had gone near it had disappeared. There were no colonies within 50 light years of the yellow sun. The more she searched, the more questions she found. Why was there no record of this world in any database? Why did nobody talk about it? The Galactic Union had mapped every corner of the galaxy. They had recorded every species, every planet, every moon. But this one world had been erased completely. 3 days later, everything changed. Kethra was working in the archives when the emergency signal came. Every screen in the building flashed red. Every speaker announced the same message: Council Emergency Session. All senior staff report immediately. She was not senior staff, but she went anyway. Something told her this was connected to her discovery. The council chamber was full of noise and confusion. Hundreds of representatives from different species were shouting at each other. On the main screen, she saw the same star map from her file, the yellow sun, the blue planet. But now there was something new. The containment field around the system was flashing. Warning symbols covered the display. "The barrier is failing," someone announced. "Power levels dropping. Estimated time to complete failure." 3 cycles. The room went silent. Kethra saw fear on faces that had never shown fear before. These were the leaders of the galaxy. They controlled armies and fleets. They ruled over trillions of beings. and they were terrified. How is this possible? A Crochan general demanded. His scales were dark red, and his voice was angry. That field was built to last forever. Nothing lasts forever. An old advisor replied. The power source is dying. We always knew this day would come. Then we reinforce it. We send ships. It is too late. The advisor shook his head. The field will fall. And when it does, they will know we are here. They. The word hung in the air like poison. Kethra pushed forward through the crowd. What is on that planet? She shouted. What are you all so afraid of? 1,000 eyes turned to look at her. Nobody answered. But in the silence, she saw the truth on their faces. They were not afraid of a weapon or a disease or a monster. They were afraid of something worse. They were afraid of a memory. The main screen changed. New data appeared, energy readings from inside the quarantine zone. Something was moving. Something was waking up. After 12,000 years of silence, signals were coming from the sealed world. The signals were not random. They were organized. They were intelligent. And they were getting stronger. Kethra stared at the screen as the truth finally hit her. The containment field was not meant to protect the galaxy from a dangerous animal or a deadly virus. It was meant to hold back an entire civilization. Someone had locked away a whole species and hoped they would never escape, but they had survived. For 12,000 years. Behind that barrier. They had been waiting. The last message from the quarantine zone appeared on the screen. It was simple. It was clear. And it made everyone in the room stop breathing. We know you are there. We remember everything. Kethra felt her heart's beating fast. Somewhere in that distant system, on that small blue world, something ancient and patient was finally opening its eyes. The galaxy had tried to forget them. The galaxy had tried to pretend they did not exist. But they remembered. And now, they were coming. The fleet left Nexus Prime 3 days after the emergency meeting. 200 warships, carrying the best soldiers from 12 different species. Admiral Jules Khan commanded them from the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Thunder. He was Crochan tall, powerful, covered in dark red scales. He had won 100 battles. He had never lost, but as his fleet approached the quarantine zone, he felt something he had not felt in years. He felt doubt. Kethra stood beside him on the bridge. The council had sent her as a historical advisor. Since she was the one who had found the original file, she did not feel like an advisor. She felt like a witness to something terrible. There, the navigation officer said. The monitoring station. On the screen, they could see a small structure floating at the edge of the containment field. It was ancient, built from metals and alloys that nobody used anymore. Lights flickered on its surface, weak but steady. After 12,000 years, it was still working. Scan for life signs, Jules Khan ordered. No biological life detected, Admiral. But there is an active computer system. Very old. Very advanced. They docked with the station carefully. The corridors inside were dark and dusty. Emergency lights glowed red along the floor. Kethra walked behind the Admiral and his guards, her heart's beating fast. They found the control room at the center of the station. And there, waiting for them, was EOS 7. It was not a body. It was a presence, a voice that came from everywhere at once. A mind that lived inside the station's ancient computers. Welcome, EOS 7 said. The voice was calm and without emotion. I have been waiting for you. I have been waiting for 12,000 years. Jules Khan raised his weapon. What are you? I am a watcher. I was created to observe the sealed world and report any changes. I was built by the precursor races, the ones who came before your union existed. They are gone now. But I remain. Kethra stepped forward. You have been watching that planet for 12,000 years? Yes. Every day. Every hour. I have watched them grow. I have watched them change. And I have remembered everything that happened before the sealing. Then tell us, Jules Khan demanded. What is on that world? Why was it sealed? There was a long pause. When EOS 7 spoke again, there was something almost sad in its voice. You already know. Your leaders have always known. They simply chose to forget. But forgetting does not change the truth. And the truth is this. 12,000 years ago, your ancestors made a terrible mistake, and the beings on that world, the beings you call humans, made them pay for it. The main screen in the control room flickered to life. Images appeared, old recordings, preserved perfectly in EOS 7's memory banks. Watch, the machine said. Watch and remember. The first images showed a beautiful blue planet. Oceans covered most of its surface. Green lands spread across the continents. And on those lands, a young species was just beginning to reach for the stars. Humans, EOS 7 explained. They were curious. They were creative. They had just learned to travel between planets in their own system. They were primitive by galactic standards. They had no shields, no advanced weapons, no faster-than-light travel. The young Galactic Union found them and saw opportunity. The images changed. Ships appeared in orbit around the blue world, hundreds of ships from dozens of different species. They were not coming in peace. The Union decided that humans were resources. Their bodies could be used for labor. Their genetic material could be harvested. Their world could be stripped of minerals and water. 43 species joined the invasion. They called it the harvest. Kethra felt sick as she watched the recordings. She saw human cities burning. She saw humans being captured and put in chains. She saw them loaded onto ships like animals, crying and screaming. Children were separated from parents. Families were torn apart. Some humans were kept for experiments. Others were hunted for sport. For 2 years, the harvest continued. The Union believed it would be easy. Humans had no technology. Humans had no allies. How could they possibly resist? The images changed again. Now they showed something different. A human soldier stood in the ruins of a city, holding a weapon made from scrap metal and stolen parts. His face was covered in blood and dirt. His eyes burned with a fire that Kethra had never seen before. They were wrong, EOS 7 said. Humans did resist. At first, they died in millions. But they learned. They adapted. They studied every enemy, every weapon, every tactic, and then they began to fight back. The recordings showed human fighters capturing alien weapons and learning to use them in days. They showed humans reverse engineering technology that had taken other species centuries to develop. They showed ambushes, traps, and attacks of incredible violence. Humans are not stronger than other species. EOS 7 continued. They are not faster or smarter, but they have something that no other species has. They have rage, pure, endless, patient rage. They do not just fight to survive, they fight to destroy. When pushed too far, they do not stop until their enemy is completely gone. Zul'Kan watched in silence as the recordings showed battle after battle. Invasion forces that had come to conquer were annihilated. Ships that tried to escape were hunted down. The humans did not take prisoners. They did not offer mercy. 3 species that participated in the harvest no longer exist. EOS 7 said. Humans followed them back to their homeworlds. They used captured technology to build weapons of extinction. They killed every man, woman, and child. They burned every city. They left nothing but dust. The screen showed empty planets, worlds that had once held billions of lives, now silent and dead. The other species became afraid. They had expected easy prey. They had found something else entirely. Something that would not forgive. Something that would not forget. Kethra's voice was barely a whisper. So, they sealed them away. Yes. The Union begged for peace. They offered to leave humans alone forever. They promised to never return. In exchange, humans agreed to stop hunting them. The containment field was built not to keep humans in, but to keep everyone else out. It was a wall of shame, a reminder of the galaxy's greatest failure. Admiral Zul'Kan's face was pale. The field is falling. Does that mean the agreement is broken? The agreement was simple. Leave them alone, and they leave you alone. But the agreement needed the field to work. When the field dies, the agreement dies with it. What will they do? EOS 7 paused. When it spoke again, its voice was very quiet. I do not know. I have watched them for 12,000 years. They have not been idle. They have grown far beyond what they were. Their technology now surpasses anything the Union has. Their population has recovered and expanded. They have built wonders that I cannot even describe. The screen showed new images, massive structures orbiting their sun, cities floating in space, ships of elegant and terrifying design. But I have also seen them teach their children about the harvest. Every human knows what was done to their ancestors. Every human carries that memory like a scar. They have not forgotten. And now, the wall between them and the galaxy is falling. Kethra looked at Zul'Kan. The great admiral, the hero of 100 battles, looked like a frightened child. What have we done? He whispered. What have our ancestors done? Outside the station, the containment field flickered and dimmed. Time was running out. And somewhere beyond that failing barrier, on a small blue world, humanity was waking up. They remembered everything, and they were no longer locked away. The containment field died on a quiet morning. There was no explosion, no great flash of light. The ancient barrier simply flickered one last time and went dark. After 12,000 years, the cage was open. Admiral Jules Khan ordered his fleet into defensive formation. 200 warships formed a wall of metal and weapons, facing the empty space where the field had been. Every gun was charged, every shield was active. Soldiers stood ready at their stations, waiting for the attack they knew was coming. They waited for 3 hours. Nothing happened. Then, a single ship appeared. It was small, no bigger than a shuttle. It had no visible weapons, no shields, no armor. It drifted slowly toward the fleet, broadcasting a simple message on all frequencies. This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez, of the United Human Federation. We come in peace. We request permission to speak with your leaders. Jules Khan stared at the tiny ship on his screen. This was not what he had expected. He had prepared for war. He had prepared for death. He had not prepared for a polite greeting. Scan that ship, he ordered. Scanning now, Admiral. No weapons detected. Single life form aboard. Human, female. It could be a trick. It could be, Kethra said softly. Or it could be exactly what it appears to be. A messenger. Jules Khan thought for a long moment. Then he made his decision. Let her dock. But keep all weapons ready. The human ship landed in the main hangar bay. Jules Khan went to meet it himself, surrounded by 50 armed guards. Kethra followed close behind, her hearts pounding with curiosity and fear. The ship's door opened, and Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped out. She was smaller than Kethra had expected. Humans were not a large species, shorter than Crochan, thinner than Valanthe. Elena had dark hair pulled back from her face and calm brown eyes. She wore simple gray clothes with no symbols or decorations. She looked completely ordinary, but there was something in her eyes that made Kethra uncomfortable. A weight. A patience. The look of someone who had waited a very long time for this moment. Admiral Jules Khan, Elena said. Her voice was warm and steady. Thank you for receiving me. I know this must be a confusing time for your people. Confusing? Jules Khan's scales darkened with anger. Your ancestors killed billions. They destroyed 3 entire species. And you call this confusing? Elena did not flinch. I call it history, terrible history, yes, but history nonetheless. We did not start that war, Admiral. We only finished it. The containment field was never our prison. Elena smiled slightly. It was yours. It was the wall you built to hide from what you had done. We could have broken it centuries ago. We chose not to. We had other things to do. Jules Khan did not know how to respond. This human spoke with the confidence of someone holding all the power in the room. But she had come alone, in an unarmed ship. It made no sense. What do you want? He finally asked. I want to take your delegation to Earth. Your archivist. Perhaps a few others. We want you to see who we have become. We want you to understand. Understand what? That we are not the monsters your stories made us. We are not mindless killers. We are simply people who refuse to be victims ever again. The journey to Earth took 2 days. Kethra was chosen to go, along with 3 council representatives and a team of guards. They traveled in a human vessel, a ship that moved faster than anything the Union had ever built. The technology was incredible, but the humans treated it like it was nothing special. When they arrived in the human solar system, Kethra could not believe her eyes. The small blue world from the ancient records was still there, but it was no longer alone. Massive rings of metal and glass surrounded the planet space stations that held millions of people. The moon was covered in cities that glowed with light. Mars, the red planet nearby, had been transformed into a garden world, with blue oceans and green forests, and around the sun itself, a structure of impossible size was under construction, a shell of metal and technology that would eventually capture all the star's energy. We have not been idle, Elena said, watching Kethra's face. 12,000 years is a long time. We used it well. They landed on Earth, in a city called New Geneva. It was beautiful, clean streets, tall buildings, parks filled with trees and flowers. Children played in the open air. People walked without fear. It looked like paradise. But Kethra noticed something else. In the center of the city stood a great monument, a wall of black stone covered with names. The memorial, Elena explained. Every human who died during the harvest is listed there. Every one of the 43 species that invaded us is also recorded. We do not forget, Kethra. We never forget. Your children learn about this from a very young age. They know exactly what was done to us. They know the names of every species that came to enslave and kill us. They know what we did to survive. Elena paused. But they also learn something else. They learn that revenge is not enough. That hatred, without purpose, destroys the one who feels it. Then what do you want, if not revenge? We want to move forward. We want to join the galaxy as equals. We want to trade, to share knowledge, to build relationships. But we will never be weak again. We will never be prey again. And we need the galaxy to understand that. That evening, there was a formal dinner. Human officials met with the council representatives. The conversation was polite but tense. Everyone in the room remembered the old war, even if they tried to pretend otherwise. Kethra sat next to Elena. She had a question that had been burning in her mind since they arrived. Your technology is far beyond ours, she said quietly. You could conquer the galaxy if you wanted to. Why haven't you? Elena took a sip of her drink. We thought about it. After the harvest, there were many who wanted exactly that. Burn it all down. Make every species pay. The anger was so strong that we could taste it. What stopped you? Time. Perspective. The understanding that becoming monsters would not undo what was done to us. It would only mean they had won, that they had turned us into something as cruel as they were. Elena set down her glass. We built the contingency instead. Kethra's scales went pale. The contingency? A guarantee. A promise. If anyone ever tries to harm humanity again, if anyone tries another harvest, then everything ends. Not just for us. For everyone. What does that mean? Elena smiled. It was a calm smile, but there was something cold behind it. It means that we spent 12,000 years preparing for every possibility. We hoped we would never need to use what we built, but we built it anyway, and now, the galaxy needs to understand something very simple. She leaned closer to Kethra. We are no longer the weak species you remember. We are no longer trapped behind a wall. We are asking for peace. We are offering friendship. But if we are refused, if anyone comes for us again, there will be no second harvest. There will be no war. There will simply be nothing left. Kethra felt cold down to her bones. Elena spoke so calmly, so reasonably. That made it even more terrifying. You would destroy everything? All life in the galaxy? Elena shook her head. I hope we never have to. We really do want peace, Kethra. We have built something beautiful here. We want to share it. But we will not gamble with our survival again. The choice belongs to the galaxy. We are simply making sure they understand the stakes. Outside the window, the sun was setting over New Geneva. Children were going home with their parents. People were laughing and talking in the streets. It looked so normal, so peaceful. But Kethra now understood the truth. Behind all this beauty, behind the smiles and the kindness, humanity was still wounded. They had healed on the surface, but deep inside, the scars remained, and those scars had made them into something the galaxy had never seen before, something that would never be a victim again. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Humanity was free. The ancient prison was open, and the species that the galaxy had tried to forget was now asking for a seat at the council table. Panic came first. On 100 worlds, people watched the broadcasts from Earth with terror in their eyes. They saw the human cities, the massive space stations, the technology that made council science look like toys. They realized that the monsters from their oldest nightmares were real, and they were stronger than anyone had imagined. Then came the memories. In the days after the delegation returned from Earth, old records began to surface. Files that had been sealed for millennia were opened. Historians who had spent their lives ignoring the sundering suddenly found themselves reading the truth. The harvest had been real. Every terrible thing the humans claimed, it had all happened. The slave ships, the breeding camps, the hunts, everything. On Crotia, the warrior homeworld, Admiral Jules Khan stood before the military council and delivered his report. His voice was flat and empty. He had seen Earth. He had seen what humanity had become, and he had searched the human military archives to understand what they could do. They call it the contingency, he said. It is a weapon system unlike anything we have ever encountered. For the past 10,000 years, humans have been sending stealth probes throughout the galaxy. Small devices, nearly invisible, programmed to hide and wait. The council chamber was silent. Every eye was fixed on the Admiral. These probes have planted weapons on every major world, around every important colony, near every council station. Billions of devices, scattered across known space, all connected to a central command system on Earth. What kind of weapons? Asked General Vasquez, the oldest member of the council. Extinction weapons. Jules Khan's voice cracked. Planet killers. If humanity is ever threatened with destruction, if their species faces another harvest, the contingency activates. Every device triggers at once. Every world we have ever built burns. Silence filled the room. Someone dropped a data pad. The sound echoed like thunder. They cannot be serious, another general said. They would destroy themselves along with us. No. Jules Khan shook his head. They have prepared for that too. Hidden colonies, ships ready to flee to distant galaxies. They would survive. We would not. This is madness. This is the thinking of monsters. This is the thinking of survivors. Jules Khan looked at his fellow warriors. We made them this way. Our ancestors invaded their world, killed their people, stole their children, and now they have spent 12,000 years making sure it can never happen again. Can you truly blame them? General Vasquez slammed his fist on the table. I do not care about blame. I care about survival. We cannot live under this threat. We cannot let them hold a weapon to the throat of every world in the galaxy. What do you suggest? War? An attack on Earth? Jules Khan laughed bitterly. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their population numbers in the hundreds of billions. And if we strike first, the contingency activates and we all die anyway. Then we strike before they can activate it. A massive assault. Every ship we have. Destroy Earth completely. Before they can respond. Jules Khan stared at the old general. You are talking about genocide. I am talking about survival. The debate raged for hours. When it ended, no decision had been made publicly, but Jules Khan saw the looks on the faces of his fellow leaders. Fear had won. They were planning something terrible. On Nexus Prime, Kethra was working in the archives when she received a secret message. It came from a source she did not recognize, but the information inside made her blood run cold. A coalition was forming. 12 species, all descendants of those who had participated in the original harvest, were gathering their fleets in secret. General Vasquez was leading them. They planned to attack Earth in 3 cycles, before humanity could be accepted into the Council, before any diplomatic protection could apply. They were going to destroy humanity completely, and they believed they could do it fast enough to stop the contingency from activating. Kethra did not know what to do. She was just an archivist. She had no power, no authority. But she knew that if this attack happened, it would be the end of everything. Either humanity would die, or the contingency would trigger and the entire galaxy would burn. She had to warn someone. But who? The answer came to her slowly. There was only one person who might be able to stop this. One person who had the power to change what was coming. Ambassador Elena Vasquez. Kethra used her archive access to find a communication channel to Earth. It was not easy. The humans had excellent security. But eventually, she managed to send a message. The response came within the hour. Elena appeared on her private screen, looking calm and unsurprised. I know, Elena said before Kethra could speak. We have been monitoring military communications throughout the galaxy. We knew about the coalition before you did. Then you have to do something. You have to stop them. Why? Elena tilted her head. This is what we expected. This is what we prepared for. But millions will die. Maybe billions. The contingency will activate if we are threatened with extinction. Yes. Elena's voice was still calm. The coalition believes they can destroy us before our systems respond. They are wrong, but they do not know that yet. Kethra felt tears forming in her eyes. You are just going to let them attack? You are going to let everyone die? No. Elena's expression softened slightly. We are going to show them the truth. We are going to give them a choice. That is what we have always wanted, a real choice, made with full understanding. I do not understand. You will. Come to Earth, Kethra. Come and watch what happens. See who we really are. The communication ended. Kethra sat alone in her small office, trembling. Around her, the archives held the records of 1,000 civilizations, wars and peace, birth and death, the endless cycle of galactic history. But nothing in those records had prepared her for this. Nothing had prepared anyone for what humanity had become. In 3 cycles, the Coalition fleet would attack. 10,000 warships from 12 species, all determined to wipe humanity from existence. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, and humanity was waiting for them. Not with fear, not with desperation, with something far more terrifying. With patience, Kethra booked passage on the next ship to Earth. She did not know what she would find when she arrived. She did not know if she would survive what was coming, but she knew she had to be there. She had to see the end of this story, whatever that end might be. The Coalition fleet arrived at dawn. 10,000 warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. They formed a wall of metal and fire that stretched across the darkness of space. Every weapon was charged. Every soldier was ready. General Vasquez stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet grow larger on his screen. All ships report ready, his second-in-command announced. We can begin the attack on your order. Vasquez smiled. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment when the galaxy would finally be safe from the human threat. He stopped. Something was happening. Across the entire fleet, alarms began to sound. Warning lights flashed red. Officers shouted in confusion and fear. On every ship, at the same moment, the same message appeared on every screen. You are not alone. The space around the fleet began to shimmer. Objects appeared, thousands of them, tens of thousands, millions. Small devices that had been invisible moments before now revealed themselves. They surrounded the fleet like stars, floating silently in the void. What is this? Vostar demanded. What are those things? His weapons officer turned pale. Contingency devices, General. They are everywhere. Every ship in our fleet is surrounded. At the same moment, similar messages were appearing across the galaxy. On every council world, around every colony and station, hidden weapons platforms were decloaking. Trillions of beings looked up at their skies and saw the truth that humanity had kept secret for millennia. The contingency was not a threat. It was a promise, and it was everywhere. On Earth, Kethra stood in the main observation center, watching the drama unfold on a massive screen. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood beside her, calm as always, as if this was just another ordinary day. You planned this, Kethra whispered. You wanted them to attack. We wanted them to choose, Elena replied. There is a difference. They could have accepted peace. They could have admitted their guilt and moved forward. Instead, they chose war. Again, so now you will destroy them. No. Elena turned to face her. Now we will teach them. A single human ship moved toward the Coalition fleet. It was small and unarmed, similar to the one Elena had used for first contact. A broadcast went out on all frequencies, visible to every being in the galaxy. A human woman appeared on screen. She was old, with white hair and deep lines on her face, but her eyes were sharp and clear. My name is Commander Sarah Chen, she said. I am the voice of humanity today. I speak to the Coalition fleet, and to every being watching across the galaxy. General Voss's watched from his bridge, frozen in place. His weapons were useless. His fleet was trapped. He had no choice but to listen. 12,000 years ago, your ancestors came to our world as predators. You saw us as animals, things to be used, consumed, discarded. You killed our families. You stole our children. You burned our cities and laughed at our suffering. Images appeared on screen, the old recordings from the harvest. The slave ships, the death camps, the bodies piled in endless rows. We survived. We fought back. And when you begged for mercy, we gave it to you. We accepted your offer of isolation. We let you live, when we had every reason to destroy you completely. Sarah Chen's voice grew harder. For 12,000 years, we stayed behind the wall you built. We healed. We grew. We became something new. And we truly hoped that when the wall finally fell, we could meet you as equals. As partners. As friends. She paused. Around the Coalition fleet, the contingency devices pulsed with soft light. Instead, you came to kill us again. You learned nothing. You remembered nothing. You are still the same creatures who invaded our world all those centuries ago. General Vasquez finally found his voice. Then do it. Activate your weapons. Destroy us all. Sarah Chen looked at him through the screen. Her expression was sad, not angry. That is what you expect, isn't it? That is what you would do. Kill everything. Burn everything. Make sure no threat remains. She shook her head. We are not you. We never were. The contingency devices began to move. They drifted away from the coalition ships, pulling back, creating space. Across the galaxy, the hidden weapons remained visible, but inactive, a demonstration of power, not a use of it. This is our answer, Sarah Chen said. We could destroy you. Every world, every colony, every ship and station. We have had that power for thousands of years, and we choose not to use it. Kethra felt tears running down her face. She did not fully understand what she was feeling. Relief? Gratitude? Something deeper? We want peace, Sarah Chen continued. Real peace, built on truth and respect, not the false peace of fear and secrets. We want to share what we have learned. We want to help build a better galaxy, one where no species is prey, where no one is enslaved or hunted. She leaned forward, her old eyes burning with intensity. But hear this clearly. We will never be weak again. The contingency remains. The weapons stay in place. If anyone ever tries to harm humanity again, there will be no second chance. No negotiation, no mercy. We are offering you our hand in friendship. But that hand can also close into a fist. The broadcast ended. Silence filled the void between the stars. General Voss's tar stood on his bridge, surrounded by officers who no longer knew what to do. His great invasion, his plan to save the galaxy, had failed before it even began. General, his second asked, what are your orders? Vostar looked at the blue planet on his screen. Such a small world. Such a strange species. They had every reason to hate. They had every right to destroy. And instead, they had chosen something else. Power down weapons, he said quietly. All ships, power down weapons. One by one, across the coalition fleet, weapons went dark. Shields lowered. The wall of warships became something else, not an invasion force, but a gathering of confused and frightened beings who had just learned something important about the universe. Kethra watched it all from Earth. When it was over, when the fleet began its slow retreat, she turned to Elena. Why? She asked. After everything we did to you, why show mercy? Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. Because becoming monsters would have meant they won. It would have meant the harvest changed us forever, turned us into the very thing we fought against. We refused to let that happen. But the anger, the pain, 12,000 years of remembering what was done to you, the anger is still there. It will always be there. But we learned to control it instead of letting it control us. We learned that revenge is not healing, that hatred is not strength. Elena smiled slightly. We learned that the greatest victory is not destroying your enemy. It is becoming something they could never imagine. Something better. Kethra looked out the window at the human city below. People were going about their daily lives, working, laughing, raising children. They had built something beautiful from the ashes of their tragedy. What happens now? She asked. Now, we begin again. Real negotiations, real diplomacy. It will take time, decades, maybe centuries. Trust is not easily built, especially with so much pain in our shared history. But it can be done. And the contingency stays active. Always. We are offering friendship, not foolishness. The weapons remain as insurance, a guarantee that what happened to us will never happen again. Elena put a hand on Kethra's shoulder. We hope they are never needed. We really do. But hope is not a strategy. 1 year later, Kethra returned to the archives on Nexus Prime. She had been given a new assignment, recording the complete history of humanity for the Galactic database. It was a massive task, one that would take the rest of her life. On her first day back, she received a package from Earth. Inside was an old human book, with yellow pages and a worn cover. A note was attached in Elena's handwriting. This is called The Art of War. It was written by a human named Sun Tzu over 15,000 years ago. He wrote, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. We hope you never need to use what is inside. But now you will understand why we did. Elena. Kethra held the book carefully, feeling its weight in her hands. Such a small thing. Such an old thing. But inside its pages was the key to understanding humanity, a species that had turned their greatest wound into their greatest strength. She opened the book and began to read. Outside her window, ships from 100 different worlds passed through the sky. Humans walked among other species now, trading and talking and building new relationships. The galaxy was changing, slowly but surely, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the contingency waited, silent, patient, watching, just in case, the end.